I mean, what a question. Are you guys ready to go? We're always ready, aren't we?
We are, because I saw your carefully prepared notes
Yeah.
before this one, which was you wrote Shawn McGovern.
It was all I could bear to write. I'm only back from holidays. I'm just struggling.
Well,
And we're in this studio, which I hate.
yeah. So you're getting the that moment of,
We're ousted from our normal studio.
and you're back to reality now after jetting around.
Yeah. The Med.
Yeah. Well, it's good to have you back, to be honest, because it was.
Did you miss me?
I did miss you, I suppose.
Ish.
And let's not go overboard.
I was really annoyed actually when I rang the other day.
Why?
And you said you couldn't speak to me and it was lunchtime. I was still on my holidays. And I was like, are you out for lunch with somebody else?
Yeah, I wasn't
One of
actually.
your fancy ladies.
Well, actually, I was. Yeah,
You were?
There are many of them, obviously.
Yeah.
Many. But in fact, no, I was not. I was waiting for my own child to hear news of her finishing her junior
Right,
cert. So,
okay.
which is great,
Absolutely. All of them out there now can start to enjoy the summer, any of them that are finished.
Yes.
So look, do you know what? You
But
go away like for a week
yeah,
and you just like, these people who don't do what we do, obviously,
yeah,
and they don't follow every little
every
bit that's
little
in the news,
drop.
the crime, and they've normal lives and everything. You just don't know what's going on if you turn off for a while.
No, you don't. And
You have to just nod when people talk about riots and
yeah,
this
yeah.
and that and funerals and court cases and stuff. I was nodding, and that's why therefore, all I have in my notes is Shawn McGovern, because this is one of the only things I know at this point is that he, of course, has been back in court and he's arguing the bit about the arrest in Dubai that it wasn't legal, essentially.
Yeah.
Um, did we know or hear anything about the arrest, how it was made? Sometimes the Dubai police, I mean, in the case of some of the other high profile individuals, members of that European super cartel who've been arrested, they release quite an amount of footage of the arrests. They show their faces, they're quite good production
Yeah.
values in the filming of it. Um, Anything like that, or are they going to wait until this case is over, do you think?
No, well, they haven't done that. I mean, I think the great example will be Rafael Imperiale, where
Mm.
they released, I think it was something like a 5 minute video showing the police going in and where he was living, all of that stuff. But that hasn't happened with Sean McGovern.
Was there video of Taggy as well, or did we
There,
just we got some sort of footage of where he was living?
there was footage. No, there wasn't. Yeah, look at, for whatever reason, they
Mm.
seem to choose it differently depending on each case. But with Sean McGovern, he's appeared in the special criminal court a second time,
Yeah.
effectively, last week, and we heard in the very first court appearance that his legal team were reserving judgment on his arrest and his extradition on the legality of it.
Mm.
And in the second court appearance, we heard that they're effectively they've raised concerns about the legality of it. So if when people come before the special criminal court, there's almost a series of challenges that they go through. If you remember some other cases where you sometimes get a challenge to the legality of the court itself,
Mm-hmm.
you get other technical. Can be quite a technical court. So Sean McGovern is the first person ever to be extradited from the UAE. So that is going to give, I suppose, fertile ground for the lawyers to challenge that,
Mm-hmm.
because there are technicalities in any arrest and extradition.
So they're ultimately, I suppose, challenging the legality of it, obviously, but they will be possibly looking at the actual treaty or agreement that was signed between the two countries. I mean, Helen McEntee laid the groundwork for that, the former Justice Minister, when she went over to the UAE.
Yeah,
And then it was ultimately signed by
by the new
Jim
government.
O'Callaghan,
Yeah.
the new Justice Minister. Was it signed by him or was it signed by Helen McEntee?
No, it was signed by
Signed by Helen
it was signed by the new minister. So the treaty was drafted and then it was accepted by the Dáil
Yeah.
later. But obviously, Sean McGovern was already arrested
Mm.
before the treaty was signed. So what his legal team have said, they're going to challenge the legality, the propriety, and the process surrounding his arrest and
Yeah.
extradition. But they've made a point that it's to do with the arrest in Dubai.
The arrest.
Now, normally, if somebody is to be extradited, there's a few criteria they're going to have to meet under Irish legislation. The first is it's going to have to be an extraditable offence, so murder.
Mm.
Clearly, the murder of Noel Kirwan there's no debate about that. That's going to be an offence in both countries, and it's clearly he's been charged, so he
Hmm.
can't be extradited for questioning. But there's other uh, legalities, I suppose, around. Was he presented with the right documentation at the right time? All of these very technical bits under I think it's the Extradition Act of 1965. All of these criteria are going to have to be meet. He's going to have to be shown the charges in
Has
his
it got
proper
anything to
language.
do with how he was held before the courts over there and how long for and
Yeah,
that kind of thing?
there are time limits on it and
Like, are
all
you
of that.
challenging what happened in the UAE here in Dublin?
Oh, you definitely. I think
Yeah.
that's what they've given notice. Now, obviously, we haven't heard the details of what specific bits they are gonna challenge, but
Mm.
there's all sorts of technicalities that, for example, if you're to be extradited to Ireland and you're an Irish citizen, the request has to come through the Department of Foreign Affairs and it has to go through diplomatic channels, and there's all of these issues, and also obviously to do with the extradition treaty, where that was standing, and if he was arrested in advance of there being a treaty, that could still be possible. So
It
we
was
don't.
always said that McGovern was the test case,
Yeah,
wasn't it? And that they wanted him first so
yeah,
as they could lay the groundwork for, maybe Daniel Kinahan coming in his aftermath and whoever
yeah.
else. And this is exactly what they were talking about. I mean, this would have been expected by the state. This is expected by any of the Gardaí involved in it. This is to make sure they have dotted every I and crossed every T.
Exactly, exactly. It's a kind of a you a Hail Mary,
Yeah.
if in American football, where you kind of you throw the ball as far as you can and
Hmm.
hope for the best. And not that's not to dismiss the legal challenge totally,
Mm.
but to an extent, looking for a technicality like this, which have been accepted in the special criminal court in the history of extraditions, and there have been very major cases back in the day during the Troubles where these technicalities played a huge role. So challenging that, I suppose, is the first port of call,
Yeah.
and it's hit and hope, I suppose, to an
Mm.
extent. Obviously, in theory, then that could win, and Shawn McGovern walks free, and he's a free man. Um, now,
Because so if his extradition was deemed
illegal.
illegal,
Yeah.
is he a free man? Because he's still charged with murder, surely. It doesn't mean the charge of murder is dropped, does it?
Well, I mean, look. I actually don't know, but
Do
I
you know what I
mean,
mean?
yeah,
I
like,
mean, like if he got back maybe to the UAE or to some place of safety, but as he walks out the door, like say he wins that,
yeah,
the extradition was not legal. Where
yeah.
where would we be left then? Because we have him in Ireland. He's here. The extradition is done. He's essentially the horse is bolted as such. Um, it's only if our people have done something illegal, surely, or wrong
Well, you
in
have
that.
rights if when you're arrested
Yeah.
and when you're charged, effectively. So they have to be met in a court,
But
and
he wouldn't be able to walk free from court if 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 his extradition surely was deemed would we have to bring him
well,
back
he's arrested. I mean, we're
to the UAE?
extraditing him because he's been arrested under our and because
And
he's
he's
wanted man. He's
charged.
a charged
He's
in.
charged, which is different than being arrested. So he's actually charged before the court.
So
We're
all
getting
of
down
that,
into the weeds here
yeah,
a
yeah.
little bit.
So
But it is a bit complex. I mean, we'd probably all of this is rattling around, no doubt, these,
yeah. I mean,
solicitors and the senior counsel's minds. But, you know, um,
but like people do have legal rights to be, arrested properly, to have
yes,
their rights read to them, and all of those
they
things,
would
and to
then
be extradited.
presumably have to apply for the charge to be dropped in a separate legal case, I imagine,
Yes, and of
due to the
course,
fact that
yeah. So
yeah.
there'd be, you go through great technicalities. I mean, if you look at the Regency trial, what can happen in courts, obviously with the Jerry Hutch, Jonathan Dowdall conversation, for example, that was admitted to the court, even though the court kind of accepted that it
Mm,
was effectively not
legal.
legally done.
Mm,
And the reason those things can be admitted at times in the court is kind of for the greater sense of justice when you're
mm,
dealing with something very serious. And we've spoken about this before, for example, CCTV that
mm, mm,
captures somebody on the street under normal circumstances, you might say they have a right to privacy. But when you're talking about a murder charge, because of the level of seriousness
mhm.
so technicalities can matter and do matter, but that's only one part of it. And
Yeah.
if obviously is that's the initial thing. It's not a plea to do with it. I mean,
Did he go to court this time, or did he, do it remotely from Portlaoise prison?
yeah, it was a remote video
Yeah,
link, and he's back up next week again by video link.
a
So
video link.
obviously with these kind of brief hearings, he would
Yeah.
consent to that, I would imagine.
And is this next week expected to be heard in full? Will we hear the details next week
No,
of his arrest?
well, we may hear some details,
Yeah.
but I'd imagine you're just going to have these constant appearances
Hmm.
where obviously there's going to be legal submissions, there's going to be discovery, there's going to be those documents are going to be analyzed, and then his own legal team will make submissions. So the process certainly is going to be a lot quicker than some of the cases,
Yeah.
because the special criminal court is not backed up like it was. So he will get these hearings, and
So in the meantime, McGovern has been holed up in Portlaoise prison since he arrived back in Ireland, where he's in total isolation there, and that is in the A5 wing. We
yeah,
spoke about this before. There had been last minute um, updates to some security because such is his level of threat that is seen by the prison system. And they were even afraid of drone attacks, essentially, when he was going out to the yard. We did talk about who he was under threat from. Is it you know,
is it his friends or his enemies?
his
I
friends or
suppose.
his enemies,
Yeah,
exactly? And we kind of concluded that he's probably under threat from both.
yeah,
And he is certainly, the prison system agree that he's the number one level threat of the entire prison system. Again, this is a bit of a learning curve for the prison system too. This is a test case because obviously the big prize out there for law enforcement is still Daniel Kinahan.
yeah.
And I mean, this is not, the Shawn McGovern story is not global news. But I can guarantee you, if Daniel Kinahan is arrested and the same process happens and he's been brought back to the Irish prison system to be remanded in custody pending a court case, that is going to be absolute mega global news. And all eyes of the world will be on our system, our legal system, our Gardaí, and our prison systems to see if it's robust enough to deal with this kind of level of organised crime. There's interest again coming from the US.
Yeah.
I won't give you exact details, but one of the top publications in the States is working on a major story around the Kinahans and, looking at boxing links again. There's always that whisper, is Daniel Kinahan still involved in boxing? People who know the subject matter would say yes, he still has a hand in it from where he is and from the safe kind of confines of um, the United Arab Emirates, where he was once a celebrated boxing professional. Um, but nonetheless, the prison system is getting used to dealing with McGovern. They don't want anything to go wrong
No, and I think
in all the time that he's going to be there.
yeah, and I think the guards are. I mean, Drew Harris came out and spoke this week. Like there was a time actually, if you remember, and this is even when the feud was ongoing, when
Mm.
the Gardaí wouldn't publicly name the Kinahans ever. And it's not so long ago that they would,
They'd call them an organised crime group.
or what? Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
or a sinister organized crime group, but they would never say the Kinahan organized crime gang, even though it would
Yeah.
presumably be on guarded documents all over the place. But they are now speaking about them, and even the fact Drew Harris came out during the week, and I suppose, and you have to say it's justified. They're I suppose celebrating this success
Mm.
and still trying to apply the pressure. Drew Harris said there was a lot of things which were said couldn't be done have been done, and he praised the authorities in the UAE for letting it happen. And then interestingly, he focused in again, which he has done a number of times, on the £5 million reward or $5 million reward
Mm.
for information leading to the arrest of Christie Senior, Christie Junior, and Daniel Kinahan, saying that, I suppose, looking to say to people around them, right up the top of that organization, that the Kinahans are effectively dismantled and that money is still there. They're going to be they're going to be facing justice, and now's your time to make hay and get your $5 million dollars
Well,
reward.
Drew Harris, is somewhat peculiar at times as a commissioner. He is ever and always the politician,
Mhm.
which we've discussed, and a good one at
Yeah,
that. He
yeah,
he, he knows how to deal with these sort of international states and how to conduct himself and all the rest of it. But when it comes to the Kinahan organisation, he says the most peculiar things. I
Yeah.
mean, he at one point there in recent months suggested that, who knows who could be looking for them.
Yeah.
You know, not the fact that the Gardaí here, and in particular the Drugs and Organised Crime Bureau, have been working tirelessly since 2016 to investigate and bring home the Kinahans. I mean, that's practically the point, one of the points of their existence.
Yeah.
And a huge amount of manpower, hours, and everything else has gone into that. There is a file with the Director of Public Prosecutions in relation to Daniel. It's a little bit more blurred lines when it comes to Christopher Senior and Junior, but nonetheless, certainly the Gardaí who are working in the force believe that we as a country have been working tirelessly
Yeah.
to bring home these people and put them before the Special Criminal Court. Whereas Drew Harris sometimes makes comments as if, oh, maybe they'll go to America,
Yeah.
or like it's strange. I suppose if you weren't so dug into the story, listening to that, it sounds really good.
Yeah.
There's a 5 million reward, and just reminding people of that in case anyone had forgotten about it. That's been in place for years now.
Yeah.
It's obviously, it's still there. You could analyze what he's saying there. It's still there. No one's talked.
Yeah.
Why hasn't it gone? Nobody's been paid. They haven't been arrested. Why are we still banging on about this if it's nobody? You know what I mean? That's been a bit pedantic about it. But nonetheless, he does say things that are slightly confusing when it comes to the Kinahan organisation.
Yeah, but look, I mean, no doubt their international reach is there, and everybody is aware of that. But in terms of there is advanced investigations, obviously, into murders that happened on the streets of Dublin, and murders are the priority and have been the priority for the Gardaí. Um, Look, I think the moment of truth is gonna come.
Mhm.
I don't know that we'll hear it in advance, but the DPP will make a decision. If they make a decision to charge Daniel with murder, they then have to go uh, effectively and get a warrant for his arrest, an international warrant, which will then be communicated through diplomatic channels. I don't think that would be, I think that would be kept very, very quiet. I don't think you get advance notice. And then that moment of truth will come when that lands in Dubai. And I have to say, I believe at this stage that whatever Daniel is doing over there, I don't think it'll be enough. I think if the state, the Irish state,
Mhm.
decides to charge him with murder, I think he will be arrested. You do hear things, of course. You've heard a few things about, what he's up to over there, and how that he's certainly putting out a PR campaign, I suppose, that he's given up everything. And
The boxing, you mean?
well, in terms of, that yeah, in terms of the criminal side of it,
Mm.
that we have heard that he's gone around telling people he's not involved in anything anymore, and he's,
I
changing
hadn't
ways.
personally heard that, but I
Yeah,
mean, I'm not surprised if he
yeah,
does that. He's always been manipulating and pushing an agenda. And, sometimes, like over the years, I suppose I might have got pieces of information. I've always been really cautious
yeah,
when it comes to the Kinahan organization, the bits of information, because I know what an enormous propagandist
yeah,
that Kinahan is. Sometimes a lot of what you hear, he's actually pushing that out himself. I mean, I think a lot of the in the beginning, there was not in the beginning, but in kind of years gone by, say 2019, 2020, in actual fact, 22,
mm,
after those sanctions, there was an awful lot of information coming in that he was no longer in
yeah,
the Emirates. He was gone to Oman. He was gone here.
yeah,
He was gone there. He'd fled the Emirates and all. That was absolute nonsense. And he had put that out himself.
yeah,
And sometimes you wonder, is he using the information highway as a way of testing people? And that would always worry me as well. That a piece of information, he often would have given a piece of information to an individual to see, are they talking to anybody?
yeah.
How does it get back? How does it come back? Information is very powerful.
Um,
And, it could be a particular lie or inconsistency that he'll only tell one person,
yeah.
and then he waits to hear it,
Well, look,
to see which circle it's gone in.
I think that, but I do think there is no doubt that I think, as I said before, I think the Kinahans have become too infamous for the UAE. I don't, whatever way they've inveigled themselves into society and there, I think they just become a byword for gangsters in
Mm.
paradise. You know, they've become when these. There was another story I saw just recently there, written in one of these big international crime sort of
Mm-hmm.
investigative sites. And again, it was about, money laundering in Dubai. It was actually focusing on an Albanian gangland criminal. But even within that article, the Kinahans get the name.
Yeah.
And I mean that can't that's not what they
I
want over
know
there.
exactly. And then, like, what's going on in Scotland, and let's
Yeah.
revisit that actually,
Yeah.
because I think we should do that later in the week or maybe into next week and really get
Yeah.
down to what is happening
Yeah.
there, the background to that feud that has broken out. And there's been a lot of, fears bubbling along over the last year that this is really going to break, and now it has broken,
Yeah.
this feud. So we go back to that. But yeah, I mean, everywhere something happens, that's, Scotland, part of the UK, obviously, um, the Kinahans are
Yeah.
there. They're
Yeah.
being named. They're
Yeah.
being spoken about. It's at BBC.
Yeah.
You have, the New York Post. They're being
100%.
linked to.
Like,
It's just they are so massively global. I mean, the return of Daniel Kinahan, the Shawn McGovern is of interest to us, and it's probably of interest to our listeners. Um, but outside of Ireland, really,
well,
it's
it
not
wasn't
big
from
news.
no, it wasn't big news, but it's still gonna mention it everywhere.
Is it because that he was named as his number two?
Yes, so it still get exactly. It
Mm,
still gets Kinahan cartel,
yeah,
gangster gets extradited. So it still goes everywhere.
yeah,
Sky News, BBC, it goes everywhere.
yeah,
Now, there was a time when the BBC and Sky News would have been carrying quotes from Daniel Kinahan saying, "My boxer is a
yeah.
great boxer,"
Indeed,
and they
indeed.
wouldn't have bothered. So
Mhm.
things have definitely changed. Um, look, we time will tell.
Mm.
You know,
So, yes, well, look, we must make some more inquiries as regards how he's getting on in prison. I mean, McGovern has to be still running on some sort of adrenaline at the moment. I'm sure no matter what, there's an end to something,
yeah.
which has to have been pretty stressful existence
Oh well, look. I mean,
over the
look.
past few years since he was found himself named in the by the US Treasury. Must have been a pretty stressful existence, looking over his shoulder, all the rest of it. There must be some little bit of relief that that bit of it is all over.
Totally,
But
because
then he's got his family back out there in the UAE. He's got his life to try and navigate within the prison system, where he's seen as the number one, basically, threatened prisoner. So he's that. And obviously, he's focused on this legal attempt to undo what has been done. And that will keep him going for a while before then, ultimately, I imagine he has to face into the details of the evidence against him that the state are going to bring into his trial. So, you would be running on a bit of adrenaline and
well, I mean, I think what was said, and we wrote it ourselves in the Sunday World, that by the time he got back to Ireland, and I think we had spoken about it, had he got bail or anything
yeah,
like that, and he hadn't got special conditions in prison in Dubai. He was in, which, we've called many prisons hellhole prisons over
yeah,
the years, but that looks like a hellhole,
really.
and that,
Where was it?
well, it's in Dubai.
Yeah.
It's
Can you
in
imagine the heat of it?
the heat of it, but also I think the overcrowding and
Oh,
the
Jesus.
all of that, all that goes with that, not for the faint-hearted. And there was a sense that he kept absolutely silent throughout all his travels back to Ireland, but there was a sense from people in the know that he was effectively relieved
Mm,
to be
mm.
out. So while Portlaoise might not seem like an ideal place to spend your time, Portlaoise prison, uh, it's a significant step up from where he was by all accounts.
Like the state ultimately, and particularly the Gardaí who've investigated, and the UK police, etc., believe Sean McGovern is a seriously dangerous individual. And part of the way he's being held in Portlaoise prison, 23-hour lockup, and not being able to mix with other prisoners, etc., is because of fears that he will commit crime from behind bars still. A very dangerous, dangerous individual, um, who took a lead role in one of the most violent, vicious, and one sided feuds that we have ever seen in the history of organised crime in Ireland. And he was at that position, it's believed, where he was deciding who'd live and die.
Mm.
So he has a very psychotic, really, nature.
Yeah, you would think so. I mean, these were not, while of course he lost a friend, David Byrne. I mean, by all accounts, he got himself into that position by being ruthless enough to carry out the orders of Daniel Kinahan, and to carry them out relentlessly and without looking twice.
Mm,
He also, according to the U.S. Treasury Department, he was so trusted that he effectively became the criminal mouthpiece for that whole cartel.
mm,
And of course, you don't get to be in that position. You don't get to rise into that position to leapfrog lots of other people who came along the way, without having those qualities,
mm,
which the qualities of ruthlessness and ambition, really.
for sure. Anyway, we'll follow his case onwards as he continues to challenge the legality of his arrest in the Emirates. Thanks, Niall.
Oh, thank you.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs, and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.